Hi, yes, my name is Vibeke Binz Vallevik. I work with Serena in the research department of DNV in the AI risk program. And I'm currently doing a PhD on synthetic data, looking at both legal issues, technical issues, and the medical side or the clinical side.
My name is Serena Marshall, and I'm the project manager from DNV working on SYNTHIA. DNV is a risk and assurance company. We work across different sectors, but in this project, our focus is on healthcare. Within SYNTHIA, we're looking at familiar roles to DNV. So we bring our competence from different domains, and we're looking at assurance and risk. And what this really means is we're looking at, can we say that the synthetic data is safe to be used for a purpose? So assurance role. What do we need to know about the synthetic data? And we are also looking at how can we use the synthetic data downstream in a regulatory process, amongst other roles within the SYNTHIA consortium, because the SYNTHIA consortium covers the whole perspective of synthetic data, from its creation to its generation, to use, to sustainability of synthetic data into the future, really innovating and bringing the field forwards.
Well, there are probably many reasons, but mainly there are some quality issues that we haven't entirely solved yet. So there's no uniform way of measuring quality. There are many ways and there are many frameworks out there, but there's not one standard that everyone agrees on. So that is probably an issue. Also, there is this thing about the privacy risk. I think that in the beginning, when synthetic data came as the big solution to sharing, data sharing and sensitive data, it was sold as this solution that would solve privacy risk. And then, as with everything, there's no perfect solution. So we know there is some residual risk, even though you generate synthetic data from the personal data or the sensitive data. There is always a risk of inference or finding out something from that data. And I think that uncertainty around that is one of the reasons why it's a bit slow in the uptake, because you don't really know whether you can share it freely or not. And that is one of the big issues.
This is one of the questions that the article that Vibeke has written is trying to kind of set a framework on how we can tackle this issue. Is it personal data? Is it anonymous data? And also, this is the work that SYNTHIA is doing, is to kind of drive this forwards. Is the data private enough? This is something we need to know before we can share it.
So the question we're asking is synthetic data made from personal data? Is it personal data according to GDPR, or can it be seen as anonymous? And the short answer is very often we think it can be seen as anonymous. Obviously, there are lots of ifs and buts. Depends on the context, depends on how it's generated, depends on the data itself. But very often, this gray zone that you see of is it anonymous or is it not? According to GDPR and the legal analysis, it very often can fall to the anonymous side. So the short answer is, can it be anonymous? Yes. And then there's an asterisk of depending on the context and the setting and all of that. But you do need to look into the details. But yes, it can definitely be anonymous according to the GDPR definitions. So pseudonymized data, according to GDPR, is data that has been made. You've kind of make it impossible to re-identify someone from the data set. But there is a key, there is a link, and additional information. And when you put that additional information with the real data, with the data set, then you can re-identify someone. So that's pseudonymized data. And for synthetic data, it can, in some cases, be seen as pseudonymized data because you have a synthetic data set, and when there is additional information that you can use to infer personal data from that synthetic data set, then in that case, it can be seen as a pseudonymized data set. And this ruling that you point to, it's a very interesting one, quite fresh. It came September last year, September 2025. And it concludes a very long-standing discussion between different parties in the academic world and in the EU. And it actually contradicts the European Data Protection Board opinion from last year as well, where they say that as long as there exists a re-identification key, this dataset can never be anonymous. And that's the key point here, that you need to, when you analyze whether or not a dataset is anonymous, you need to look at who holds it and who has access to additional information.
Perhaps what's interesting about synthetic data is the conversation about additional information. So when we're talking about pseudonymized data, we're talking about a re-identification key that's often in the hands of the person that holds the data, and then they share that data onwards. But when we're talking about making synthetic data sets available, the additional information we're talking about could be in the public domain. So it could be scrolled from websites, Facebook, on additional information that's been already made available. And this is kind of where the problem of synthetic data kind of extrapolates that problem.
So we made a framework where it's, as you said, it's opportunity. So who has access to the information, what kind of additional information, and then it's motivation. So it's value of the data. And then it's effort, which is time and cost. How much effort would someone go to try to re-identify someone? And that needs to be balanced with the motivation. So if the data set has high value, which healthcare data very often has, it's quite sensitive, but it's also, there are differences there as well. And then you need to balance those to find out what is reasonably likely to be used.
GDPR also talks about expertise. Yes? Is that right?
Yeah, you can interpret the effort in terms of what kind of expertise do you need access to. So if you need very, very high level expertise to be able to perform such an attack, then that goes into the effort.
I think it's kind of helping create a path for synthetic data on its continual journey into commercial use, really. So we need to kind of hammer down what is private enough. We need these thresholds. They don't exist yet, but we're kind of starting to kind of create a framework for how we might assess them and kind of look at it from a kind of broad perspective. It's not just one thing that we'll need to say that it's absolutely private, but it's this balance of motivation and effort and opportunity tailored to the EU court law, tailored to the kind of technical membership influence attacks. So it's a whole journey of data privacy.
Yeah, it is. And so what we've done is we've created this framework. We've used the case law to point into when you evaluate motivation versus effort and opportunity. These are sort of the outer limits, the thresholds that the court says this is definitely anonymous, and the court says this is definitely not anonymous. Like they say, when you evaluate effort, illegal activities, that's considered too much effort. So then that's not reasonably likely. For instance, they have some, if you can find additional information through a 5-minute internet search, that is low enough effort. But there's a huge gray zone in between those two, right? Something illegal and a 5-minute web search. And that gray zone, we need to figure out where is the actual threshold for what is considered a high enough effort or a low enough effort that someone would actually have the motivation to try to re-identify someone from a data set. And I think as a community, that's what we need to look into practical examples. Practically, where do we put that threshold in different contexts? And what will the regulators accept as well?
And we need to be communicating these results to the regulators, to the policymakers, to the data scientists. We all need to be thinking pragmatically when we use synthetic data, not it's worst case scenario or not it's the best case scenario, but somewhere in the middle.